Microsoft Word 2003, organizing content with tables. We have a lot of content sometimes, and we have a lot of just stuff thrown all over the page. One of the ways we can organize it is by putting it into easy to read and easy to visualize content with tables. In this video, we are going to get our introduction to the world of tables by how we insert tables into our text, how we convert text to tables, that's kind of a nifty little feature, and how we modify the table structure, add more rows, delete rows, add columns, delete, all those different type of things we might need to do to our tables. Many times when we're writing up our reports and doing documentations, we want to organize information a little bit better. And tables are a great visual way for us, just like charts and diagrams. And if you took our Excel 2003 series, you realize how powerful Excel is. But you can input some basic table functionality into Microsoft Word as well. It just helps us organize the content that we have. Let's say we're doing a second quarter report for our Acme Instruments Inc. and I want to get some sales numbers organized. Well, of course, I can use tabs and try to format a little bit, but if it gets anything more than this, it's going to be really crazy trying to put all that information in. So what can I do? Well, I can use tables to help organize my information, make it more concise, consistent, and a heck of a lot easier to read. Now there are three ways that I can put tables into my document. Now the first is up here on the standard toolbar, you'll see that I have an insert table button. When I click and hold this, it then says, all right, do you want to put one column, two columns, three columns, four columns, five columns, and you can, keep dragging over to the side, or do you want to add more down here, a 4x5, four rows down. You can do 4 rows down, 1 column. I mean, you can create whatever table you want to do and then just click and drag as big as you want it. I mean, look at that huge thing. Or we can come up here and just cancel. See, if I hold it over there, it cancels it out. That's one way of drawing one. So let's say I want to put just a box of 4. I click it and it creates, notice, within my margins, it creates this table which has 4 cells. 2 columns, 2 rows. So let's go ahead and delete that one. That's one way of putting in a table. The other way I can put a table is I can click on the table up here. Notice that's one of my menus. Insert table, and it'll say, what are the number of columns you want? 5. This is, by the way, default. Number of rows? 2. Do you want to auto fit it? Fixed column width. So it's auto compared to the particular margins that you have. You can also do auto fit to contents. You can auto fit to the window. You can do a table grid with the auto format. And right now it's just set for table grid. And then remember the dimensions for new tables. If I want all my new tables here to be just like they are, I can do that. And that way every time I insert a new table, it will look exactly like the other one. Well, we probably want to do that. So if I say number of columns 5, number of rows 3, and I click OK, watch what happens. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns, 1, 2, and 3 rows. So now I've created this table of 5 columns and 3 rows. That is the second way. The third is kind of fun. You can draw it. Go up to Table. Notice this is Draw Table. I click this, and it says, all right, start drawing the table that you want. And it gives me all kinds. Draw Table, Eraser. This is your Table and Borders view toolbar, which is now floating out here. I could then add it to my toolbars if I want. And then if I want to make it float again, just drag it off. We're familiar with how that works. You do draw, and notice I can draw my table how big and how wide I want on my particular document. So now I go ahead and drag it. That's one cell right there, and you can do the tables and borders and add the line style and do, no border. You can add lines. You can say I want them to be 1 point. You can draw the border color, outside borders. You can add and insert the table within it. You can split the cells, align the top left. You have all kinds of different formatting you can do with the tables and borders. So let's go ahead and see that I can, draw this out if I want. That's kind of fun. But typically, the way I do it is I either use the automatic insert table, where I create the table, or I use under the table the insert right here. Either way, I hardly ever use a draw table, but that's just a matter of personal preference, and that is just a way that you can do it. Now, after you create the table, you can enter data by putting text or a number in each cell, which if you're not familiar with that, so let's create a real quick one here. 1, 2, 3. We'll do 3 by 3. I can now start typing in north. Oops, I misspelled north. I hit tab, by the way, to move to the next cell. Let me hit shift tab to move back. North, south, east. Uh-oh, I forgot. I wanted to add another, a column over here for west. How do I do that? Well, I can come up, place my cursor still on this. Under table, insert, I can do columns to the left, columns to the right, rows above, rows below, or just an individual cell if I want. So I want a column to the right. I insert it and automatically adjust because I have the auto formatting set on. So I click over here and now I can input the, I already have southwest. That's the one I'm looking for. And then if I hit tab, it moves me down, or I can use my arrow keys just like I normally would in Excel spreadsheets and tables and cells. I can do that. And now I can say, I can put in some more numbers, 123, 235, 456, 789. I can put this information. All I'm doing right now on my tables is inputting the number, and I'm inserting this and putting this information in. But notice I already had text driven or put in. So I can either put the text in by typing, press enter, move tab to move across, or I can also go in and grab my information from the text and create a table. Pretty sweet, don't you think? So what I can do is, let me go ahead and, by the way, I can select this table and I can come up here and delete it. I can cut and copy, select all, place, so I can clear, do whatever I want to do. Or I can just select the whole thing and then just hit the delete. And it'll delete all the text that I have here. If I want to get rid of the table, I can come over here to the table and say delete table, and it takes out the whole thing. Notice I have some text here. What if I wanted to convert this text to a regular table? Maybe I'm just out there typing, I forgot, or someone sent me text, plain text in column or tab stopped format. I can come out merely by coming over here, selecting on the text, and I can start creating a table based upon the text that I have, as long as it's setting up that it's set up through a tabs. So any tabular text, that's what they call it, can be converted to tabular text can be converted to a table. So all I would need to do is come over here and select over close by the text that I want to do. So select all the paragraphs of the text, which I just did. Got all it. Now it could be more than this, obviously. I'm just using this as a short example. But I go ahead and I come over here, I select all this, and then under the table menu, and I go ahead and show this, I can go ahead and convert my text to a table. Notice I can also go the other way. Once I've got a table and I don't want to show the grids and the lines and that, I can convert it back to text. I say text to table. It says, all right, what are the number of columns that you want? Well, wait a minute. I only see 4 columns here, so I probably don't want 7 columns. And the reason why it's 7 is because of the tab stops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's why it has it. I want 4. And the number of rows, 4. I can do that as well. Do I do fixed column width? Do I want to separate text at the tabs? Paragraphs. I can do other, commas, whatever I want to do. That's how I separate my text. Now I use multiple tabs here, and so that's why it's going to give you that different type of look and feel. So if I say 7, which is the original number of rows, changing them up as I go to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 9, whatever I want to do. Auto fit to contents, auto fit to window. All of this gives me the ability to convert my text to a table. So let's go ahead and cancel this. Let me show you, by the way, my tab stops. See how many I got here? Well, what I'd want to do is I'd want to get rid of some of these tab stops, so that way I only have the appropriate amount of columns that I want. Now see, this can sometimes be a little bit more disconcerting because you're like, oh, okay, what if I didn't do this? But remember, you can use whether they're separated by commas, separated by tabs, whatever you want to do, you can take that text and convert it. So let's go back up here. We're going to convert text to table. Now notice what it does. 4 automatically says that. And you can adjust it. But let's go ahead and stick with the tabs. We click OK and look what it did. Boom! Bada bing, bada boom. We got it. We've got our columns. We've got our rows. We have our text now in tabular form, or we used to be tabular, now it's in table form. So very nifty little feature that we can do just by utilizing the convert text to table. So let's say we want to manipulate our table structure. Now structure is different than formatting. Formatting we're going to talk about in another video, but here we can see I've got my columns. I've got 4 columns, north, south, east, and west columns here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 2 rows, but maybe I don't want the columns to be evenly spaced out. Or maybe I want to add more columns, or maybe I want to add more rows, or make the row height even bigger. How can I do that? That deals with table structure, and that's what we're going to finish up here with. So the first thing you want to know, though, is how to select portions of your table or the entire table in order to manipulate the table structure. Well, we've seen kind of me doing this a little bit throughout this video, but if we notice, every time I move my mouse over the table, anywhere on the table select button just pops up over here in the top left, and in the bottom right is the sizing arrow, which opens up right down here, and we'll show you that in here in just a minute. But if I come up here and I select the entire table, just by selecting it, it picks every single part of my table. I could have a 6-page long table. All I needed to go is up to the top of it, and it will select the entire table, as you can see right here. Now another thing we might want to do is maybe do a particular column. Well, this one's a little touchy. You have to be careful with your mouse. Notice my mouse will change to a little drop-down arrow, but if I move just a little bit, it goes back to the cursor there. If I do that, and then up, you got to find it, select it. Now when I click on that, it selects the entire column. If I want to select multiple columns, I can use the Shift key. See, I changed my mouse here. I hold down the Shift key, I click, and now I've selected those 2. Now, if I don't want to select individual, or I want to pick individual columns to add to my selection, I hold the Control key down, and notice since I didn't have the Shift key, it didn't select everything from north all the way to west, it's just the individual ones that I want. So that's just one way that we can select that. Rows, a little bit different. You take your mouse, come over here to the gutter side, and just select next to the row. It selects the entire row. Over here the same way, select the entire row. Pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. You can do the Shift key and the same thing, and it'll select multiple rows or individual rows. If you want to do the cell, fairly simple, depends on what you want to do. You can select in the middle of it, and then you're inside the cell, and you can start typing. You can double click, and it'll select whatever text is in, or the amount or number is in the cell. Or you can triple click. You go 1, 2, 3. And it selects the entire cell, so you can manipulate that, the structure, the width of the cell, or whatever you want to do. So that's just, and might be saying to yourself, well, Chris, why did you show us that? Well, because sometimes you might not want to do something to the entire table. You only want to do it to a row, or you only want to do it to a column, and it's important to know how to select individual pieces of your table. Now, if you want to maybe insert a row or a column, we've already shown you how to do a column. We had to add it for the west. If I come down here, and let's say I want to put a row below this particular row, I can come up to the table, insert menu, and I can do columns to the left, columns to the right, but I want to do a row below. So I click that, and instantaneously I have a row in place, ready to go. So I can start typing in more information here, and do another 235, do a 256, you can do a 123, and now I have a new row to input my information into. So that's kind of sweet, and we can do that. The other thing we can do is we can resize the columns by either utilizing our mouse. Notice how if I roll over this row, it changes to those double arrows with the double bars in between. That means that I can move and adjust the height of my row. So if I select it and I click and hold, notice it puts that little bar there, and then I can move it down, and now I've changed the height of this particular row. Or I can move it back to where it was, just simply by doing that. I can change the width of the columns by selecting and moving it back. Now notice, because I have it fit on auto width for this particular table, which you saw when we set this up, it's going to adjust the rest of the particular columns to make sure that it still fits within that area. But you can see all I'm doing is I'm using my mouse and I'm grabbing it and moving it to where it needs to be. So that's all I'm doing, simply just doing that is putting it where I want it to be, and just by utilizing my arrows in my mouse. You can also come up and do the table under the properties here. You can see where it says auto fit. You can auto fit the contents, auto fit to the window, do a fixed column width, distribute columns evenly, distribute rows evenly. This is how you use the auto fit if you want to do that. Now if I go to the table properties, watch this. When I go to table properties, it brings up the ability for me to go to each individual row, allow row to break across pages. I can specify the height. I can do the column. It says here's the previous width, measure it in inches. I can do it in percent of the entire table if I want. And you can even do that on the individual cell. You can do individual cell size. Now you have options down here that we can select, and you can say the cell margins will be the same as the entire table. We wrap text, or we can fit text into the cells. We have a lot of options there. Click OK. We can center the text. Right now it's done to the top. We can do the center, or we can put it to the bottom. Now because we're auto-fitting the text into the row height in this particular cell, it's not going to change right now, whatever you do at this particular thing. Now you can also go to the table. You can say the size, the preferred width. Now of course, because we're using it with the auto fit, it's not going to change that until you change it up here with the preferred width. The other thing you can see is, where do you want the table to appear above the text that comes in the alignment? The table right now will fit over to the left. It moves over to the left. You can do it in the center. You can do it in the right. Then you can also do text wrapping. Do you want text to go around it? In other words, if I resize my table, which I'll do just a minute, do I want text to move around it? I can use positioning here by selecting positioning, saying do you want it to the left, relative to the column, distance from the surrounding text, move it with the text. So if you move the text, do that. Allow overlap. We have a lot of little selections that we can do here. And again, this is all about positioning our tables on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and say position it around. So now when I come over here, and let's say I want to resize my entire table. Notice I go down to here to the bottom right, and I move my table to that size. Now it's going to adjust accordingly, as you can see here, to fit. Now if I'm over here typing, I say, as seen below, we can expect to have adequate sales across all 4 regions. Now I want the text to wrap around to the right of that. Now hopefully, because I've said it correctly, it's going to do that. We expect to have even better results in the next few quarters. We are happy, well, I can spell here, happy with the results so far. This is a good thing. So now we've added more text. Now watch this. I've got text on the top. I can now add text over here. Here is the table I was mentioning. And I keep hitting enter. Watch what happens. Now it moves over here. Here is the text I have underneath. See what's happened now? Here's my table. The text, when I go down here, it says, remember I said move with the text. So as long as I keep typing and hitting enter here and moving the text, it'll move down. It's not until I come over here to the side and add the side text and then come up underneath here that it will move. Once I get alongside it, the table will remain where it is. Now, of course, I can move the table by selecting it and then moving it. See how I'm dragging it around? And I can move it up over to here. And then it will do what? Wrap the text around over here to the right. And that was due to, if you remember, going to the table properties, I want it around, or I don't want any text, operating. So we have those options here with our table. So Again, don't think that just because you have a table it has to sit by itself, taking up the whole entire page. You can put it anywhere you want. Just allow text wrapping. You can change the size of it by dragging it here. You can also change the size of the columns and the rows. If I come over here and select a column, and I want to change the effect of that column, all I need to do is come over to the table, and I can say, with the tables that I have, if I want to go ahead and take off the auto fit, I can auto fit the content. See, look, auto fits to the content. So I have these capabilities with my table properties, and if I want to, instead of having to always come up here to table and table properties and hide grid lines and convert and auto fit and do all those type of things, all I need to do is come up here to view, toolbars, and down here tables and borders. See what happened? It automatically added my toolbar for my tables and borders right here. So all this is enabling me to do some pretty cool things with my tables. So we got our feet wet by taking a look at how we can organize our content by utilizing tables, where we put them and how we put them into our text on our document pages. We also took a look at a nifty little feature, converting text to tables. So if you've got tab stopped or comma delineated text, you can convert that to an actual table structure, which is very nice if you're getting text from maybe another source. Then you can do modification of the table structure. Change the size of the table. You can change the size of columns, rows. You can add more rows, delete rows. That's what we mean by modifying the table structure. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.